Welcome back to Velshine Rule. We are continuing to dig into the whistleblower complaint that led to the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. There are a lot of names involved, so let's explain a few you might not be familiar with. You likely already know about the top U.S. officials connected to the call in some form: President Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Attorney General Bill Barr, and the president's personal lawyer, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. But there's more. And House Democrats say they want to hear from some of these next three people. T. Ehrlich Breckbuhl. You don't know this name, do you? Well, he serves as counselor to the State Department. He is one of Pompeo's deputies and is listed by the whistleblower as being on the call. Next, Kurt Volker. He resigned as special representative to the Ukraine in the wake of the whistleblower complaint. But according to both the whistleblower complaint and Giuliani, Volker helped connect Giuliani with Ukrainian officials. Also named is Gordon Sondland, U.S. ambassador to the EU. According to the whistleblower complaint, Sondland went with Volker to give Ukrainian leadership advice on, quote, how to navigate the demands President Trump made. He also allegedly worked to contain the damage to U.S. national security allegedly created by Rudy Giuliani. Not mentioned directly in the complaint is acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. But according to the Washington Post, it was Mulvaney who delivered Trump's order to withhold military aid to Ukraine 1 week before that infamous phone call with Ukraine's leader. There are also, quote, a dozen White House officials, the whistleblower says, that were on the call in the Situation Room. And, quote, White House lawyers who directed officials to move the call transcript and notes to a code word level system. That's a lot.
All right, well, we have now learned that, I mean, we've been talking about this for 20 minutes already on this show, and we haven't got all the information out. President Trump is asking foreign countries to help investigate the origins of former special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe. The Department of Justice confirms to NBC News that the president sought help from Australia's prime minister in what was described as a routine call asking Australia's law enforcement to work with their U.S. counterparts. The Department of Justice says the U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr's request. The president contacted other countries as well. Back in May, Barr asked the U.S. attorney from Connecticut to investigate whether the FBI's probe into the Trump campaign was properly started. Here's President Trump on the broad authority that he gave Barr for that investigation.
The Attorney General is one of the most respected people in this country, and he has been for a long period of time. He's going to look at a lot of documents. Some he might find interesting, maybe he'll find none interesting. He can look, and I hope he looks at the UK, and I hope he looks at Australia, and I hope he looks at Ukraine. I hope he looks at everything, because there was a hoax that was perpetrated on our country.
All right, then. Joining us now, Glenn Kirshner. He was a federal prosecutor for 30 years in D.C. Let's start with this. Is it legal to ask foreign governments for help for what, by all accounts, seems like a politically motivated personal issue?
I would say no if we're talking about the phone call, Stephanie. It gets really murky when you have, Bill Barr running in a globe-trotting, trying to enlist the aid of other countries in what looks to be an effort to undermine some of our own U.S. law enforcement investigations. I mean, this is just not the way any of this works. I am concerned that we're beginning to go down so many rabbit holes that people are going to lose sight of really what's at issue here, and it is that phone call that the president had, apparently overheard by Pompeo, with President Zelensky, which by any thinking person's account is wrong all day long.
So I think you make an interesting point that as these rabbit holes emerge, and they're showing up faster than we can often keep track of them, what really is the issue? Because the president and his allies have tried very hard to make this an issue about a whistleblower, whoever gave the whistleblower that information, being spies and perhaps treasonous, and Democrats being about doing anything to bring down this presidency, when in fact we have other issues that do seem to be more important, not the least of which is a national security issue and election interference issue.
And I'm with you, Ali. Frankly, all of these issues are important because you have Giuliani kind of running around as a free-range civilian diplomat doing, I don't know, either the State Department's bidding or the president's bidding or maybe both. And maybe that sort of improper venture includes Pompeo or other members of the State Department. I mean, I think it's important for our government to figure these things out, if only to prevent them in the future. But you asked the central question, what's most important? Really, what's most important is a president who figuratively holds in his hands funds that have been allocated by Congress for the Ukrainian government to protect itself and its people against unlawful Russian aggression. And in a phone conversation, the president holds that money hostage and says, oh, you want to defend yourself? I have a favor to ask, though. That is really what we need to remain focused like a laser beam on, because if that's not an impeachable abuse of power as contemplated by Alexander Hamilton, I don't know what is.
Let's talk about Bill Barr and what his actual job function is. Help us understand what the Attorney General's role is traditionally. Because for mere mortals or civilians like Ali and I, one would think with all that's going on, Bill Barr, I don't want to sound sassy, but globetrotting on an issue that's highly personal to the president doesn't really seem like the job function of the Attorney General. It seems like someone from Trump's 2020 re-election campaign.
Bingo, Steph. That is not what an attorney general should do or traditionally has done. You know, the Department of Justice has a number of law enforcement agencies, the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, and ordinarily those investigative agencies in the first instance begin to look at incidents to see whether they were illegal. They begin to investigate. If there is something there, then they will get the attorneys involved, the prosecutors at the Department of Justice, led by Bill Barr. And that's how criminal investigations ordinarily unfold, not the prosecutors, as headed by Bill Barr, running around looking either for crime or looking to undo investigations that have already been done. It seems like Bill Barr wakes up every morning saying to himself, what crimes can I clear the president of today?
So there is actually somebody who's the president's lawyer. Democrats have subpoenaed him, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, for documents relating to Ukraine. Here he is last night on whether he'll testify.
I don't know. I'm weighing the alternatives. I'll kind of like go through it. I'll get all my evidence together. I'll get my charts. I don't know if they let me use videotapes and tape recordings that I have. All this nonsense about I was interfering in the election. I gathered all this evidence before the Mueller probe ended. So it was clearly under my responsibility as the lawyer for the President of the United States.
Well, okay, Glenn, I'm going to jump in. So back to being a mere mortal. In my little mind, I would think before this moment in time that getting subpoenaed by Congress wouldn't be something you'd answer with, I'm weighing my options. What is going on here?
So here's what's going on, Steph. First of all, I think it was shrewd of Congress to subpoena his documents or information, whether it's texts or emails, that will show just exactly what kind of communications Giuliani was having with the State Department. And I also tend to agree that, Giuliani is probably the last person that any of us want to see. If we thought Lewandowski beclowned himself, we ain't seen nothing yet. But I think here is the ace that Giuliani is holding, and I hate to say that, but he knows that Bill Barr will not enforce the subpoena in the event Giuliani thumbs his nose at Congress. That's why I've been preaching since day one. I hope Congress decides to employ and deploy its inherent contempt powers, which are lawful, and there are some jail cells in the headquarters of the Capitol.
What does that mean for us? Because you could say that Corey Lewandowski clowned himself, but in his mind, he didn't, because he wasn't there to provide information for Democrats. He was there to perform for the president, and the president said he loved it.
Yeah, and he has seen no repercussions. So doesn't that embolden the Giulianis of the world to behave similarly or maybe to not show up at all? And we know there are only 3 vehicles to hold somebody like a Giuliani or a Lewandowski accountable. Having Bill Barr refer him for prosecution, not happening. Go to court and sue to have the subpoena civilly enforced. That is happening and can happen, but it takes a very long time. Or Congress can send Paul Irving, the sergeant at arms, out to arrest somebody who the Congress has voted to hold in contempt, and they can put him in a jail cell at Capitol Police headquarters on D Street in Northeast, and they can try to compel his testimony.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.